If it were not for your pension, we would not even need you here." That was what Daniel, my own son, said to me, the very same one who once slept on my chest with fingers so tiny they looked like flower petals, the very same one who cried if I stepped a few paces away in the park, the same boy who years ago would call me Mommy when he fell and scraped his knee. That night, he did not even look me in the eye. He stood across the kitchen while checking his phone, speaking those words as if they were an objective truth, a fact without emotion, a mathematical equation. I was nothing but an income, a monthly figure keeping that house afloat, nothing more. I held a wooden spoon because I was stirring the rice to keep it from sticking. The meat was already in the oven. Rebecca had said she wanted roast potatoes, so I prepared those as well. It was hot. My back ached, and I had spent the whole day cleaning and washing because visitors were coming. Still, even so, I smiled when Jane ran into the room to hug me tightly. She was the only reason I kept going. After Daniel said those words, nobody else spoke. Rebecca smiled faintly from the hallway. She said nothing, but it was unnecessary. She had already won. I did not utter a single word either. I finished stirring the rice, turned off the heat, and with trembling hands removed my apron. I did not know if I felt anger, sorrow, or a deadly mixture of both. I walked to the sink, turned on the faucet, and splashed water on my face. I had to calm down. No more words could change what was said. In front of them, not there. Not that night. I could not sleep. I lay down in the same bed that had belonged to Samuel, my late husband, and me for nearly 40 years. The room barely felt like mine anymore. The walls no longer belonged to me, and my belongings were reduced to a dresser and a box beneath the bed. The rest served as storage. My life compressed into a small space. I stared at the ceiling for hours. I did not cry. My tears had run dry, and while listening to the soft hum of the fan, only one question kept crossing my mind. How did we end up here? Going back to the beginning is not simple. Sometimes it is easier to avoid stirring up pain, but now I understand it is necessary. 3 years ago, after Samuel passed away, the house suddenly felt enormous. At first, loneliness seemed like a gentle echo, a whisper that left me in peace. But over the months, that silence became a bottomless pit. That is why, when Daniel asked me for help, I did not hesitate for a moment. "Mom, Rebecca lost her job. We are behind on rent and I don't know what to do. Come to the house," I said without thinking. They arrived one January afternoon with Jane holding hands and 3 large suitcases. I had prepared the guest room, changed the sheets, even bought a new lamp. I was happy. My family was back. Jane hugged me tightly and whispered in my ear, "I missed you so much, Awe." I thought everything would turn out all right. Over time, I began to notice small things. Rebecca never looked me in the eyes directly. She was always busy, irritated by something. At first, I blamed it on stress, the pressure of being unemployed and the adjustment period. But then the remarks started. "Your mom does not respect boundaries," Rebecca told Daniel when she thought I was not listening. She was always there, as if the house belonged solely to her. And yes, it was mine. Legally, fully registered in my name. But I kept quiet. I did not want to create conflict. Gradually, the house began to change. I kept cooking, cleaning, and paying the bills. My pension, although modest, covered electricity, gas, and part of the groceries. Daniel had found a job, but it was not stable. Rebecca still did not work, even though she wore new clothes every month. Nevertheless, I started to feel unnecessary, or at least that was what they made me believe. One evening, Rebecca asked me not to sit down for dinner with them because they needed to talk as a couple. The next day, my chair was missing. They had taken it away from the table. I became invisible. Yet I continued to make breakfast, do the shopping, and take Jane to school when Rebecca had a migraine or was very busy. I turned into a shadow that kept everyone's routine going without anyone noticing. Until one morning, Daniel asked if he could put the house in his name. He said it would be more practical for everyone, that in an emergency it would be better, and things should be in order. I looked at him for a long time and agreed. I went to the notary, signed the documents, handed over the papers, and trusted. I never imagined they would hold it against me. Just like that, 1 month later, my room was taken away. My shared private bathroom, my freedom erased. I became nothing more than background scenery. No one asked how I was feeling. No one listened except Jane. She remained the light. Every night she climbed into my bed, even though Rebecca got annoyed. She told me about what she was learning at school, drew me flowers, told me she loved me deeply. She was the only reason I did not pack my things and leave. Even though I had nowhere else to go, I had given everything. That night, after Daniel's comment, I understood something. It was not a mistake, not a bad moment, not a careless phrase. It was exactly what he thought, what he felt, what he believed. And then, for the first time in years, something inside me broke, but not with pain, rather with clarity. I went to the kitchen. Everyone was already asleep. I sat down in front of the cold oven. I looked at the pot of rice, still warm. Then I took my old notebook, the one I used for writing recipes, and I wrote one single sentence. I deserve more than this. The next morning, I woke up early, made coffee, brushed my hair, put on the blue dress Samuel always said made me look like a summer sky, and I left without saying where I was going, without asking permission. It was not with a suitcase, but with a purpose. I did not walk far. I did not have a clear destination, but my feet knew where to go. Sometimes the body moves ahead of the mind. I crossed 2 streets, walked past. A bakery still carried the scent of freshly baked dough when I found myself in front of a place I had not visited for many years. It was a simple cafe adorned with hanging plants at the entrance and iron chairs. A wooden sign read, "The Corner of Francesca." I hesitated for a moment, then stepped inside. She was sitting behind the counter, flipping through a magazine. Her hair was tied up in a messy bun and a pair of glasses hung on the tip of her nose. She looked at me and for a second frowned as if she did not recognize me. Then her eyes widened. "Estefania," she exclaimed with a smile that brought back a piece of my youth. Oh my goodness, what a surprise! I did not know what to say. My hands were trembling. Francesca had been my closest friend in my younger days. We were inseparable until life took us on different paths. She chose to travel, study abroad, and marry a Chilean man whom she later left. I stayed in the neighborhood, married Samuel, raised Daniel, and was a homemaker all my life. She lived 1,000 lives. I lived within a circle. Still, in that moment, I felt time did not matter. We embraced as if we had seen each other just yesterday. "What are you doing here?" she asked, pouring me a coffee without even offering, as if she knew it was exactly what I needed. "I do not know," I replied honestly. "I just needed to get out of my house." Then she said, "You are in the right place," pointing to a table by the window. "Here no one rushes. No one demands anything, and there is always hot coffee." We sat down, and I shared bits of what had happened. Not everything, not just yet, but enough for her to grasp that something inside me had broken. Francisca listened attentively without interrupting. Only once did her brow furrow when I mentioned Daniel's name. Then she stayed silent for a few moments. "You know what?" she finally said. "You have always been stronger than you thought." I smiled, skeptical. "It may not seem like it because you were taught to stay quiet, to sacrifice yourself, to never ask for anything. But that is not strength, Estefania. That is their agenda." "And you can get out of there." I did not reply, but those words settled deep within me, like seeds planted. I returned home before noon. Rebecca watched me enter from the sofa, frowning. "Where have you been?" "Taking a walk without letting anyone know." Daniel was worried. That was a lie. He did not even notice I was gone. but I said nothing. I went up to my room, closed the door, and lay down. Jane came in shortly after. "Are you okay?" "Yes, my love, just a little tired." She snuggled beside me. Her warmth was like a soothing balm. She told me about a drawing she had made in class of a woman wearing a cape flying over a city. "She is a heroine," she said. I called her Estefania Blue, because of me. Of course. "You are my heroine." I did not cry, but swallowing felt hard. That night, while everyone was asleep, I wrote another phrase in my notebook. I do not need permission to start over. The days that followed were different. I was the same, yet something had changed. I no longer responded immediately. When Rebecca demanded something, I no longer hurried to set the table or wash the dishes as soon as they were finished. It was not rebellion, it was dignity, small gestures of resistance that went unnoticed at first. One Thursday afternoon, I returned to the cafe. Francisca was waiting for me with a tray of biscuits and 2 coffees. We sat outside on the terrace. She told me about her travels and how she decided to open the place after her divorce. She started with her savings and a small inheritance. She showed me old photographs. We laughed a lot. I felt alive. "Why do you not come more often?" she asked me. "You could even help me with some recipes. I know you cook wonderfully. Working here, I do not see it as a job. I see it as regaining control." I went home filled with a mixture of excitement and fear. That evening, while we were having dinner, I casually mentioned, "Today, I was at a friend's cafe. She offered me help with the cooking." Samuel did not lift his eyes, but Rebecca did. "Working at your age?" she said. "Yes, why not?" I answered. "Because you do not need to. You already have a pension. Besides, who will take care of Jane when we are not around?" "Jane is 12 years old. She can go to school by herself, and I need something for myself." Silence took over the table. No one supported me, but no one forbade me either, so I returned to the cafe. The first days, I felt clumsy, slow, and out of place. However, Francisca encouraged me. She taught me how to operate the cash register, prepare coffee with the new machine, and arrange the display cases. They even let me decorate a corner with some old items I had kept at home. A pendulum clock, a set of teacups inherited from my mother, a vase with dried daisies. Customers started arriving, intrigued by that nostalgic little space. I greeted them with a smile. I felt useful, noticed, valuable. One day I met Omar. He entered slowly, cane in hand, wearing a polite smile. He ordered tea with honey and sat down to read the newspaper. He came back every Thursday. Sometimes we talked about books, other times about politics. He told me he was a retired lawyer, smart, kind, always well-dressed. He preferred listening over speaking. He made me feel respected. One afternoon, while we were closing, Francisca looked at me mischievously. She said, "I think Omar likes you." I laughed nervously. I replied, "Don't be ridiculous." She said, "Why not? You are a beautiful woman, Estefania. You have lived. You have loved. Why couldn't you do it again?" I didn't know what to say. I wasn't ready to think about that, but it felt nice to hear. One Friday when I got home, I found my belongings stacked in the living room. Clothes, books, a box with photographs, my sewing kit. Everything was out of my bedroom. I asked, "What is this?" Rebecca responded with crossed arms without flinching. She said, "We need space. We're going to remodel and turn that room into an office. We have prepared a corner for you in the laundry room. There is a mat." I was breathless, not from humiliation, but from the coldness. And Daniel agreed. He signed the papers. Documents, do you remember? The house no longer belongs to you. I did not answer. I approached, took one of my photographs, me with Samuel and Daniel when they were little, and held it close to my chest. Then I went upstairs and slept in the laundry room. But that night I wrote one last sentence in my notebook. The day is approaching when they will stop underestimating me. I hardly slept at all that night. My body was exhausted, but my mind kept racing constantly. The laundry room smelled of dampness and old detergent. Every sound in the house echoed loudly between the concrete walls. Yet what truly kept me awake was not the memory of what had happened that night, but everything I had allowed to happen before. I thought about the years I cooked every dinner carefully, the times I cared for Jane when she was sick, the nights I got up without a sound so I would not disturb anyone. I remembered every occasion I accepted a cutting word without responding. When exactly did I become an invisible presence in my own family? The next morning, I showered early and dressed as always, wearing my favorite blouse and a hand-embroidered scarf that my mother had given me years ago. Rebecca did not even look at me as I left the house. Daniel locked himself in his study, claiming an urgent video call. I did not have breakfast. I felt no appetite. I walked to the cafe, feeling a weight on my chest that I could not shake. But the moment I opened the door of Francisca's corner and heard the little bell ring, something inside me settled. Francisca immediately noticed my expression. What happened now? They kicked me out of my room. I'm sleeping in the laundry room. She stopped cleaning the coffee maker and stared at me as if she wanted to make sure she had heard me correctly. What do you mean they kicked you out? They say they need the space. They are going to turn my room into an office. Francisca took off her apron with a sharp movement and stepped closer. You cannot keep allowing this, Estefania. This is neither normal, nor fair, nor humane. It is their house. Legally, I have no rights anymore. Maybe. But morally, they have no right to treat you like this. We stayed silent for a few seconds. Then she took my hand. There are ways to defend yourself. I know someone who could help you. He is a lawyer. Very good. His name is Omar. Omar, the client, yes. Sometimes he offers advice even though he is retired. He does not charge. He does it because he believes in justice. I don't know, Francisca. I don't want to take this that far. And what level do you think this is? Sleeping among rags and buckets, seeing your things stacked as if you were trash. I was speechless. She was right. Every day that went by, I convinced myself that I deserved the least, that I should be grateful for a roof and a meal, even though everything came wrapped in contempt. But that was not the life I wanted. Omar came by that afternoon. Francisca had told him everything, and with that calmness that seemed unshakable, he sat with me holding a notebook. The first thing you need to know is, he said that even if you have transferred the ownership of the house, if you can prove that you did so under pressure or without fully understanding the consequences, we could file a lawsuit to annul the agreement due to a defect in consent. Furthermore, there is legal precedent recognizing the rights of elderly adults in situations of family vulnerability. What does that mean clearly? It means that if we can prove you experienced manipulation or emotional abuse, you might reclaim your share, or at least secure a respectable place in the home or receive compensation. I looked at him with disbelief. How do you prove something like that? With witnesses, with your notebook, for example. If you keep a record of what has happened, that can be helpful, and if Jane supports you. I also felt a tight knot in my stomach. I did not want to involve my granddaughter in this, but I knew she was already involved just because she loves me. I thanked Omar and promised to think about it. That night, I went home determined to talk to Daniel. I waited until Rebecca locked herself in the bedroom and found him in the kitchen pouring a glass of water. I need to talk to you right now. No, Mom, I am tired. Not now, because if I do not speak, I will get sick. Daniel turned around and looked at me as if he did not recognize me. What is wrong? It hurts me. Everything that is happening hurts me. It hurts to have left my home, my memories, everything I built for you all, and now I sleep in a corner, as if I were a stranger. It is not like that. Yes, it is. And you know it. I did not ask for anything in return. I just wanted to be close, to be helpful, to take care of Jane. But you You took me out of my room as if I did not matter." Daniel clenched his jaw and said nothing. After a moment, he left without a word. The next day, I sat with Jane in the yard. She was holding a storybook, but she noticed I seemed distant. "What is wrong, Egg?" she asked. "I need to do something important, my love, and I might need your help." Her eyes lit up. "Anything you want." "Could you write down on a piece of paper how they treat me here? I know you have seen everything." She lowered her gaze. "Is it for a trial?" "Not necessarily, but I need evidence to protect myself." Jane nodded slowly and then hugged me. "I do not want you to leave. I will not go without a fight." Over the following days, Samuel and I started working quietly. He taught me how to document every event, how to speak without letting my voice shake, how to look someone in the eye without bowing my head. Francisca supported me in every way possible, offering flexible schedules at the cafe, advice, and above all, companionship. I never felt alone during the process. One afternoon when I came home, I found my sewing kit thrown on the floor, some needles broken, threads scattered, and my scissors rusted. It was my most treasured possession. I picked it up carefully, went upstairs silently, and that night I knew the decision had been made. The next day, I took all my papers to the cafe. Samuel reviewed them attentively before looking up. "We are ready. Just tell me when you want to begin the process. Now. Then get ready, Estefania, because once you start, there is no turning back." I looked at her with determination and said, "I do not want to go back anymore." We filed the lawsuit on a Friday morning. Samuel personally delivered it to the appropriate court and explained that now we had to wait for the formal notification to Daniel and Rebecca. Despite the firm step we had taken, I returned home with a lump in my throat. I felt torn. On one hand, proud to have taken that step. On the other, devastated by the thought of facing my own son in court. But there was no turning back. This was not revenge, it was about dignity. The following days passed in a heavy silence. I said nothing, and neither did they. Rebecca continued to move through the house as if she were in her own world, organizing things, quietly giving orders to Jane, completely ignoring me. Daniel avoided making eye contact with me. Only Jane stayed close, sitting beside me every night with her books, or just in silence holding my hand. One afternoon, while I was preparing tea in the kitchen, I heard the doorbell ringing persistently. I went to open it. It was an officer from the court. Daniel came downstairs when he heard the voices and froze when he saw the man holding the envelope. "Daniel Cortez?" the officer asked. "Yes." "Judicial notification. You have a deadline to respond." He handed over the envelope, made him sign a receipt, and then left. He walked away. The silence left behind felt like a crack splitting the house in two. Rebecca quickly came downstairs and, spotting the envelope in Daniel's hands, tore it apart aggressively. "What is this?" Daniel muttered quietly. His lips tightened. "It's from Mom. She sued us." Rebecca looked at me as if I had just spat in her face. "What kind of low act is this?" "A defense," I said. "I am no longer going to stay silent." She sneered scornfully. "And what do you hope to accomplish? Taking away our home?" "No," I answered firmly. "Just reclaiming my right to live with dignity, to cease being invisible, to stop being treated like old furniture." Suddenly, Daniel shouted, "This is betrayal after everything we did for you." "What did you do for me?" I fired back. "You took my room, made me a burden, and used my pension as if it were yours." Jane appeared quietly from behind, unnoticed by anyone. She had heard everything. Slowly, she stepped closer and stood by my side. "I support her, Dad," she said. Daniel stared at her, surprised. "What are you saying? Grandma does not deserve this. I have seen how they treat her. This is unfair." Rebecca laughed incredulously. "Great. Now even the kid is against us." Daniel lowered his gaze and said nothing. Rebecca stormed up the stairs, slamming the bedroom door shut. My son looked at me for a long time. There was no hatred in his eyes. Something worse lingered. Shame. "Did this have to happen?" he asked quietly. "Yes," I replied calmly, "because I tried everything before. I spoke, endured, made myself small, but you never changed and I no longer want to disappear." Daniel did not say anything else. That night, the house was quieter than ever before, as if something had broken and everyone understood it could never be mended. The days that followed were filled with constant tension. Rebecca acted like a stranger. She brushed against my shoulders forcefully whenever she passed by. She left doors open to let the noise reach the laundry room where I slept. She changed the meal schedules. Sometimes I was not served anything at all. But I no longer reacted the same way. I knew I had to write all of this down, to document every detail. Each insult turned into evidence. Omar accompanied me to the first hearings. Telling my story before strangers was both humiliating and freeing at once. I shared everything: how I gave up my home out of love, how I was pushed aside, how I slowly lost my place. Jane wrote a letter that was submitted to the judge. Her words were so pure and honest that even the court clerk had to look away. My grandmother has always been there for me. She cared for me when no one else could. I saw when they left her outside, when they stopped speaking to her, pretending she did not exist. I cannot understand how someone could treat the person who gave us everything like that. I read Omar's letter calmly. That was when I realized my granddaughter had more courage than many grown-ups. I smiled at her from the witness stand. She, sitting on the back bench, returned my gaze with shining eyes. Meanwhile, Francisca became my support. He gave me strength when I felt like giving up. He reminded me of who I was before all of this happened. One day, Daniel took me for a walk in a nearby park. He shared his story, telling me about how he traveled alone at the age of 50, the choices that distanced him from his family, and the wounds and scars that took a long time to heal. "Freedom does not come suddenly," Daniel said. "It is built and it hurts, but once you reach it, there is no turning back." That phrase echoed in my mind. One morning, we received a notice about a reconciliation hearing. It was the final chance to reach an agreement without going to court. I arrived with a heavy heart. Omar explained that if Daniel agreed, we could formalize the agreement in writing. Private room, free access to all areas of the house, respect, and a fair share of the support payments for me. We waited in the small waiting room. They arrived late. Rebecca walked in as if she'd been at a party. Daniel, on the other hand, had sunken eyes. When the mediator reviewed the terms, Rebecca stood up furious. "This is blackmail. It is a deal," she said. Omar replied, "It is voluntary. Nobody is forcing you. But if you do not sign, the case will proceed and the judge will decide." Daniel swallowed hard. He looked at me. For a moment, I thought he would agree, but Rebecca touched his arm, whispered something in his ear, and he looked down. "We do not accept," he said. The mediator nodded. "Then the trial will continue." We left in silence. That night, without saying a word, I prepared a small box with some important belongings, photographs, old letters, a handkerchief embroidered by my mother, and a letter from Jane. I hid them away in a corner of the laundry room, wrapped in a plastic bag as if they were precious treasures, because they truly were not due to their monetary value, but because they symbolized something no one could ever take from me. They were my memory, my truth, my story, and now my firm choice to never remain silent again. The following weeks grew colder and heavier, not because of the weather, but due to the atmosphere inside the house. Everything became quiet, like a forced stillness before an unavoidable storm. I moved cautiously as if every step might trigger another outburst of yelling or piercing looks. Rebecca seemed determined to prove she had no control over anything, and each day she found new ways to demonstrate it. She changed the lock on the hallway bathroom so that I could only use the laundry room bathroom, which did not even have hot water. She put latches on the pantry where the basic food was kept. She left me old bread, bland rice, and watered-down coffee. I did not complain, I simply recorded everything. Samuel had asked me to document every hostile act. I had a notebook hidden among my books where I wrote down dates, words, and actions. I was no longer a resigned victim, but a silent observer, patiently gathering evidence. Meanwhile, Jane was becoming increasingly rebellious. She began spending time at her friend Anna's place to escape the arguments. She asked her father if she could spend some nights at Francisca's house. Even though at first Daniel agreed, Rebecca quickly put an end to it. She said Francisca was filling my head with nonsense, and she did not want her daughter to be influenced by an old, crazy woman. Jane confronted her. I had never seen her shout like that before. Rebecca slapped her. I saw everything from the slightly open door. I rushed to my daughter, hugged her, and shielded her with my body as if she were still a vulnerable little girl. Rebecca yelled at me not to interfere because it was none of my business. Daniel came downstairs late. When he arrived, Jane had already locked herself in her room, and I had one trembling hand on my chest. He did not say a word, no reproach or comfort. He just looked at Rebecca as one looks at a fire, knowing everything has already burned down. The next day, Jane did not go to school. She stayed with me all day, sitting quietly in the shade of the yard, saying very little. I made her hot chocolate, the same kind I used to make when she was little. She asked me if I had ever been happy. I told her I had been many times, although it had been a long while since I remembered. She smiled with sadness. I want you to be happy again, Grandma. Maybe that is no longer my place, my dear. It is your place. You just have to believe it. That night, I wrote in my journal, Jane still believes in me. I must start believing in myself again, too. A few days later, we received a notice from the court. The date for the trial had been set. Omar called me on the phone to explain the details. Hearing that we now had a formal hearing made me shake, not out of fear, but because I realized that what was at stake was far beyond just a house. It was my dignity, my place in the world. Daniel and Rebecca found out through the official mail. I did not say a word, and neither did they. They locked themselves in their room and spent hours whispering. At night, Rebecca left the house without telling anyone where she was going. Daniel stayed alone in the kitchen. I saw him sitting with his head in his hands as if suddenly the entire weight of the universe had fallen upon him. I approached, not out of pity, but out of necessity. "Are you okay?" I asked. He lifted his eyes. They were red as if he'd been crying or had not slept for days. "I do not know how it came to this, Mom." "Yes, you do, but you do not want to admit it. She told me that you wanted to take the house from us, that you were going to leave us homeless. And you believed her?" "I do not know." I sat down across from him. The silence between us was heavier than any words could be. "Daniel, I do not want revenge. I do not want to ruin your life or Jane's life. I only want respect, peace, a place of my own, and an old age without fear. But you were fine before, right? I used to keep quiet. There is a difference." He said nothing more and just nodded as if he finally understood something. Not everything, but something. He went to bed without looking at me one more time. The trial was drawing near. Francisca took me shopping for clothes. She insisted that I had to present myself confident, steady, like the woman I used to be. She fixed my hair and applied light makeup on me. She gave me a blue scarf she had brought from Morocco. She said it was to give me strength. That morning, when I looked at myself in the mirror, I saw someone different, more upright, more present, as if I was finally starting to recognize myself. At the courthouse, Omar was waiting for me with his briefcase. He was flawless, calm, with that way of speaking that inspired trust. He gave me some final instructions, then we went inside. Daniel arrived alone. Rebecca did not want to attend. Jane was with Francisca, who had taken her to the park. I did not want her to see all of that. Inside the courtroom, the judge watched us carefully. He listened to Omar present the facts, showed documents, photographs, testimonies. We read Jane's letter. The judge requested it aloud. His tone changed as he read it. He stopped several times as if the weight of each word was too much to keep going smoothly. Daniel kept his eyes down. He said nothing. Only when his turn came, he apologized. Not excuses, just apologies. He admitted his silence, his emotional abandonment, his complicity through omission. My mother does not deserve to live like this. I failed as a son. I admit it. The judge looked at him gravely. Are you willing to correct that? Daniel nodded. The judge took a moment and then announced his ruling. I was granted a private room, unrestricted access to shared areas, complete respect for my independence, and a partial recovery of control over my finances. A formal warning was also issued to Rebecca, who was instructed to refrain from any hostile actions against me, or she would face legal charges. I left the courthouse silently. Omar stayed with me until we reached the exit. Outside, Francisca and Jane were waiting. My granddaughter ran up to me and hugged me so tightly that it felt like all my bones were realigning once again. "You won, Grandma," she said. "No, my dear, I just regained what I should never have lost," I replied. That evening, I returned home with a proud heart. Daniel greeted me at the door and offered me some tea. He did not say much, but his gestures were different. Rebecca was not there. She had gone to her mother's house, upset by the verdict. I did not know if she would come back, nor did it matter to me. I slept in the room that used to be mine, tidy, organized, with my belongings restored to their places. I lit a candle, prayed quietly, and for the first time in a long while, I fell asleep without fear. In the weeks following the trial, the house seemed to breathe differently. The atmosphere no longer felt so heavy with tension. Although I could not claim that peace was complete, the open conflict appeared to have ended. Rebecca did not return right away. According to Daniel, she had taken some time to think, but I suspected her real intention was to exert emotional pressure on him. I kept silent about everything. The role was no longer that of a mediator, nor of a silenced victim. It became that of a woman who had resolved not to endure any more mistreatment, regardless of who it came from. Daniel began to reveal small signs of regret. He would ask if I needed anything when I was leaving, or if I wanted him to accompany me on errands. He even cooked a few times, something he had never done before. I accepted with caution. It was not bitterness that made me keep my distance. It was the wish not to mistake kindness for redemption. Years of neglect could not be erased by just a few kind gestures. Meanwhile, Jane grew closer every day. She helped me arrange my belongings and spent afternoons with me talking about everything and nothing. She asked me to share stories from when her father was a child, and as I recalled the happy memories, I also began to mend the broken pieces of my own past. One afternoon, while we sat drinking mate in the yard, she said something that stayed with me. She said, "I used to think adults could not change, that if someone was selfish or cruel, they stayed that way forever. But you changed, Grandma. You became stronger." Perhaps I did not change. Maybe I simply returned to who I was before I let myself fade away. Then she asked, "So I can change too, right?" I took her hand and saw in her eyes a depth I had never noticed before. It was the gaze of a child beginning to grasp the complexities of the world. I told her yes, that everyone could change, but that, first it was necessary to have courage. She already possessed it. After 1 week, Rebecca returned. She entered the house without greeting anyone, pressing her lips tightly and lowering her gaze. Daniel embraced her as if nothing had occurred. I did not utter a single word. She passed by me as though I were invisible. In her mind, she still refused to accept that I had achieved something. She was certain her authority was untouchable, but now everything had shifted. Whenever she tried to impose her will, Daniel stopped her, not with violence, but with a firmness he lacked before. He told her that things had changed, that she needed to respect the boundaries established by the law and mutual living. Rebecca looked at him with contempt, yet she kept her words to herself. She understood that any wrong move could backfire on her. The tension returned to the house, although in a more hidden way. Rebecca no longer shouted or confronted me directly, but left small provocations behind. Dirty dishes were left intentionally when she knew I needed them. The television channel was switched suddenly when I was watching something, and whispered phone conversations clearly about me. I took notes as Omar had taught me, not to accuse, but to gain clarity. Keeping a record helped me avoid doubt, that emotional trap that had caught me many times in the past. One night, I overheard a loud argument between them. Rebecca was yelling at Daniel was no longer the same person. He was allowing a bitter old woman to control his life. He answered her with words I never expected to hear from him. She does not manipulate me. She reminds me of who I am. After that, a long silence followed, then firm footsteps and a door closing with force. The next day, Rebecca had left again. I watched everything without getting involved. It felt as if the conflict no longer belonged to me. It was between them. I stood aside, and that distance felt like freedom. Omar called to check on me. I told him that things at home were tense but bearable. He asked if I had considered moving out. I said I had thought about it many times, but had not yet found the right place. He offered to help me look. He mentioned a couple of senior living communities that were not nursing homes, but lively places with workshops, activities, and above all, independence. The idea scared me at first, but then I began to think maybe I deserved a space where I did not have to watch every word or step. That night, Jane overheard me talking on the phone and asked, "Are you going to leave?" "I do not know yet. What do you think?" "I think you should do whatever makes you happy, but if you go, I want to visit every weekend." I embraced her. Her maturity and loyalty moved me deeply. She was the reflection of everything I had tried to nurture in this family, and although in many ways she had failed, within her there was a seed that had started to grow. Days later, an unexpected call came through. It was my younger sister, Letitia. We had not spoken for years. She said she had heard about what happened, learned from a mutual friend who had seen the court ruling published in the legal bulletin. She asked if she could come visit me. I agreed, though cautiously. We had unresolved issues, old wounds that never fully healed, but something in her voice felt sincere. When I saw her step across the threshold of the house, a wave of emotions overwhelmed me. Nostalgia, distrust, tenderness. We spent the entire afternoon talking. She apologized for not being there, and I admitted that I had also distanced myself out of pride. Between tears and laughter, we reminisced about our childhood, the summers at our grandmother's home, the mischief with cousins. It was a reunion that we both needed. She reminded me that despite everything, I still had roots, that I still had someone to rely on. Letitia offered for me to stay a few days at her place, to catch my breath. I said I would think about it. After she left, I sat in the rocking chair on the porch. The sun was setting, painting the sky with shades of gold and orange that seemed to promise something. I did not know what exactly, but something. At that moment, I felt a deep conviction. I did not have to stay where I was not welcome, not out of stubbornness or pride, but because I deserved something better. Sometimes the bravest choice is not what you expect. It was not about fighting to stay, but about choosing when to leave. Even though I was not yet certain which day that would be, I knew it was drawing near. Upon entering the house, I noticed an old picture of Daniel and Jane in a dusty frame. I picked it up, wiped it carefully, and placed it gently on the shelf. Then I went to sleep peacefully for the first time in many years, with real peace in my heart. After Rebecca's visit, something inside me shifted. That conversation seemed to brush away a layer of ancient dust covering my memories. I began to realize the problem was not merely my relationship with Rebecca, nor just Daniel's emotional abandonment. It went much deeper. It was the habit of shrinking myself to avoid causing trouble, staying silent to prevent conflicts, postponing my own desires to preserve a fragile family balance. I no longer wanted to live like that. At 66 years old, I had been carrying burdens that were not mine, accepting crumbs of affection as if they were lavish feasts, waiting for recognition from those who only knew how to demand. I wondered why it had taken me so long to awaken, yet understood that sometimes, only when one hits rock bottom, can the truth become clear. That clarity pushed me to make a choice. I started searching for places where I could live independently. I was not looking for luxury or convenience, just a place where I could enjoy calm, dignity, and freedom above all else. I spoke with Omar. He sent me several options. I took my time examining them. One in particular caught my attention. The place caught my attention. It was a modest apartment complex tailored for independent older adults, featuring gardens, a community library, and art workshops. It was not a nursing home. Rather, it was a living space designed for individuals who still had a lot to accomplish, to learn, to feel. Just imagining myself there stirred a blend of anxiety and excitement. I shared this with Jane. She looked at me silently, then embraced me with tears in her eyes. She told me she was proud of me, that she had always thought grandmothers were meant to care for others, but now she understood they also deserved to take care of themselves. That night, I slept with a newfound calm. No longer did I dream about the past, but instead about the future. Rebecca came back a few days later with a more subdued, almost neutral attitude. Perhaps she had resigned herself to the new dynamic. She did not try to argue or impose her presence, but neither did she reach out. It was as if I no longer existed in her world. She watched me warily, as though she could not comprehend why I was still there, so calm and peaceful. But that did not matter to me. I was no longer afraid of her. Her disdain had lost its power over me. She became a powerless woman when she failed to manipulate, and it consumed her. Daniel started showing interest in my decision to move. At first, he seemed puzzled, as if he could not understand why I wanted to leave now that things had settled down. I explained that it was not about fleeing, but about growing, because one keeps growing even at 66. It was not abandonment, but a way to honor my past, my wounds, my journey. Accepting this was difficult, yet it did not stop me. Samuel offered his help to organize the move, but I politely declined. I wanted to handle everything my own way. At the same time, Rebecca invited me to attend a literary gathering at the Cultural Center. I decided to go. Upon arriving, I was amazed to see so many women my age sharing stories, readings, and poems. For the first time in a long while, I felt part of something. I was not just Daniel's mother or Jane's grandmother. I was Estefania, and that was enough. After the event ended, one of the coordinators approached me to invite me to join an autobiographical writing workshop. I hesitated, but then accepted. Writing had always fascinated me, even though I never dared to try before. I sat down facing the blank page and started telling my story, not with bitterness or sadness, but with pure and painful honesty. While writing, I felt the words cleansing my soul. Every page marked another step toward my liberation. One Saturday afternoon, while having tea with Jane, I told her I had chosen the apartment where I wanted to live. I showed her the pictures, and her eyes shone brightly. "When are you moving?" she asked with a lump in her throat. "Soon. I want to organize everything calmly. Can I help you decorate your new home?" "Of course, my dear. It will be our project." That sense of connection was like a soothing balm. We began planning together the colors for the curtains, the kind of plants for the balcony, and the paintings for the walls. We laughed as if we were building a magical castle, and in some way it truly was. A few days later, I received an unexpected call from Francisca. She was in the city for a medical appointment and wanted to see me. We met at a cafe. Seeing her stirred deep emotions in me. It felt like reconnecting with a part of myself that had been frozen in time. She listened carefully while I recounted everything I had experienced. She congratulated me on winning the lawsuit, on the decision to move out, and on having the courage to break the cycle. She told me that many women spend decades trapped in oppressive family dynamics, and that I was an exception. I did not know how to respond. I did not feel special. I just felt fed up, but I understood her point. Most people stay silent. I could no longer remain quiet. When I returned home, Rebecca was waiting for me in the kitchen. She looked at me with a mixture of defiance and irritation. Without beating around the bush, she said, "So you are leaving?" "Yes," I answered calmly. "And you plan to take Jane with you, too?" No, Jane is your daughter. I am only taking my freedom." She let out a dry laugh and shot me a piercing look. "Do not think this makes you a better person. Leaving the house is just another form of cowardice." I stayed silent for a few seconds, then looked at her firmly. "I am not leaving out of cowardice. I am leaving because—" And the moment spoke for itself. Because I finally realized I do not have to stay where I am not loved. That is not weakness. It is pride. He left without giving an answer. I sat down to catch my breath. The scene did not hurt me. No, I did not get angry. It confirmed I was making the right decision. The next day, I began packing my belongings. Jane was eagerly helping me. We sorted through books, photos, and mementos. Each item held a memory, but I no longer clung to them with sadness. This was a necessary letting go. A part of me was saying goodbye to this house, not as a physical space, but as a symbol of what I had endured for too long. Samuel came by from time to time, quietly watching. I noticed it was difficult for him, yet he also showed respect. One evening, as he saw me organizing my papers, he approached and said, "I know I was not the son you deserved. I do not want you to punish yourself, Daniel. What matters is what you choose to do from this point onward. Will you forgive me?" I replied, "I do not have to forgive you. I just want you to become better. For yourself, for Jane." We hugged. It was a brief, awkward but genuine gesture. Everything was ready. Only the date remained to be set. I sat down to write in my notebook a list of things I desired to do in my new life. Learn to dance tango, take painting lessons, visit rural towns, read all the books I had postponed, dream at my age as if I were 20 because the soul does not age when it is nourished. And then I understood that the end of one phase was not a tragedy, was like an open door, a brand new story waiting to be written, and this time I would be the main character from the very first line. The morning I moved began with a gray sky, though not a rainy one. It seemed as if the heavens were honoring my moment by keeping silent. I woke up early. Sleep had been sparse, not due to worry, but because of restrained excitement. I dressed slowly, brewed a cup of coffee, and took one last walk through every corner of that house, which had felt foreign to me despite having lived there for years. Each wall seemed to whisper memories that now vanished like smoke. I did not feel sad. Rather, I felt closure, as if I were leaving a stage after playing the same role for too long. Daniel appeared at the dining room doorway with swollen eyes. He said nothing, but embraced me. I gently stroked the back of his neck like I used to when he was just a child. Words were unnecessary. Jane arrived shortly after, smiling brightly. She carried a plant in her arms that we had picked together for my new balcony. It was a strong, vibrant green Ficus robusta, just as I wanted to feel, resilient and alive. Proudly she held it as we climbed into the car that would take us toward a fresh start. Rebecca did not say goodbye. I did not see her that morning. There were neither footsteps nor door creaks, as if silence had been her final message, and I did not need more. Her absence no longer hurt. Instead, it was part of the relief. The trip was short. Jane talked incessantly, already making plans for the upcoming weekend. She wanted staying overnight with me, meeting my new neighbors, decorating my reading nook. I listened to her with my heart swelling. That little girl had become my anchor amid the storm. Because of her, I remembered who I truly was. We arrived at the complex late in the morning. The building had a modest entrance framed by blooming bougainvillea. The doorman greeted us warmly and handed me the keys. Crossing the threshold of my new home, I took a deep breath. Everything smelled of fresh paint and endless possibilities. Light poured through a large window, filling the space with a cozy warmth. Jane ran to draw back the curtains and exclaimed that the balcony would be perfect for our afternoon reading sessions. We got right to work, hanging curtains, setting up the bed, arranging books on a shelf. It was simple, yet enough. At lunchtime, we sat on the floor over an improvised cloth and toasted with lemonade. She looked at me and said, "Abu, it feels like a happy home." I replied that it was because, at last, I finally felt happy too. The following days flowed like a dance of discoveries. I met Clara, my next-door neighbor, a 72-year-old woman who taught watercolor at the Cultural Center. She invited me to her studio, and I accepted. My first brushstrokes were awkward but made me laugh. It had been years since I had laughed like that. I enrolled in an art history class, a meditation course, and an advanced writing workshop. The hours became filled with new experiences and joy, activities that nourished me. I was in no rush. I felt no fear. I experienced a sense of growth. Every time Jane came to visit me, we shared our stories as two friends exchanging the tales of life. She told me about her school, her uncertainties, and her dreams while I listened with complete attention. I was not the grandmother who only gave orders or advice. I was a woman who accompanied, who learned to listen without judgment, and she showed her gratitude with genuine affection. One afternoon, while walking through the park surrounding the complex, I noticed a woman sitting quietly on a bench. She was silently crying. I approached carefully, trying not to intrude. I offered her a handkerchief. She looked at me with surprise and thanked me. We began to talk. Her name was Dolores. She had recently lost her husband and had no children. She shared that she felt invisible, unheard by anyone. I talked about my own wounds and how I had spent many years as a shadow within my own family. For the first time in a long while, I saw the same pain reflected in another face that I had carried in my own heart. Since then, we started meeting every week. We walked together, exchanged books, and cried openly. Loneliness hurts less when it is shared. A month passed, and I felt more alive than ever. One morning, I received an email from Daniel inviting me to lunch. I agreed. We met at a cafe near his workplace. He was nervous. It showed in the way he looked at me. He told me that he had started. In therapy, I needed to understand why I had allowed so much pain to happen. He asked for forgiveness again, this time with a different kind of humility. I believed him. He told me about Rebecca, how their relationship was wearing down, and how he feared repeating the same mistakes with Jane. I told him the bravest thing he could do was to break away from them now before causing more hurt. We said goodbye with a long hug. I watched him walk toward his office, his shoulders carrying a little less weight than before. That night, I sat down with my notebook and wrote a sentence. "Love is not sacrifice, it is freedom." I repeated it to myself like a mantra. It became my new guide. Days later, Samuel came to visit me with a book he knew I would enjoy. We sat on the balcony, laughing and sharing memories. He told me I looked different, brighter somehow. I told him about my workshops, my walks, and my budding garden. He congratulated me warmly and hugged me tightly. I told him I would not have come this far without his help. He replied that every step had been mine, and that he had only reminded me I had legs. That night, I slept deeply. One Sunday, Jane suggested making a video for school about the bravest woman you know. Mom recorded me telling my story. I spoke naturally, without drama, only honesty. The video went viral among her classmates. Several grandmothers felt connected to it. They wrote me letters. One said, "Thank you for saying what so many of us kept silent about." Another, I thought it was never too late to begin anew, though before I believed otherwise. As I read those words, tears fell not from sorrow but from hope. My story, with all its hardships, could illuminate the paths of others, and that possibility was an unexpected gift. Yet the deepest transformation happened within. I no longer felt guilty for choosing my own peace. Doubts about making the right decision vanished. I stopped wondering if anyone would ever thank me. I did everything for myself, and that was not selfishness, but fairness. Each morning I looked in the mirror and saw myself, not as the perfect mother or ideal grandmother, but as a woman who survived her own narrative, who rewrote it, making it entirely her own. One afternoon, I received a call from Jane. She was crying. She shared that she had a serious argument with her mother and felt misunderstood. I told her to come over. When she arrived, she threw herself into my arms and asked to stay for a few days. I gently prepared her bed. As she drifted off, I stroked her hair and thought, how wonderful it is to be a refuge, not out of obligation, but out of love. How beautiful it is to offer shelter without losing oneself in the process. At that moment, I understood something else. The true freedom lies not in being alone, but in choosing who to be with. And finally, I had the power to choose. The ending did not arrive with a loud crash or dramatic strike. It came as a whisper, a brief moment of clarity amid everyday chaos. One ordinary afternoon, I received an unexpected call. It was Daniel. His voice sounded gentler, more human. He told me he wanted to see me, that he needed to speak honestly without pretenses or blame. My heart raced not out of fear, but because of the chance that was unfolding before me. When he arrived, I greeted him with a blend of nostalgia and hope. We talked for hours. He confessed how hard it had been to grasp the damage he had caused not only to me, but also to Jane and to himself. He acknowledged that Rebecca had a toxic influence in his life, but also took responsibility for his actions. It was not an empty apology, but a promise to change, to become a better father and a better son. I felt something in our relationship being reborn, something I thought was lost forever. That meeting did not erase the past, but opened a path toward forgiveness and reconciliation. It was neither easy nor quick. There were moments of doubt and pain, but also of growth. Jane began trusting her father again, and I found within myself the strength to let go of resentment and build a new story with them, even though the wounds remained. Healing is not forgetting, but learning to live with the scars that shape who we are. Francisca remained my greatest support. Her friendship was a steadfast anchor during uncertain days and a joyful celebration in times of success. With her, I rediscovered the pleasure of sharing, laughing fearlessly and dreaming without limits. Together, we planned a trip, a small getaway we had always postponed. It was an experience that restored my faith in the world and in myself. We wandered through streets I never thought I would explore. We breathed in fresh airs and immersed ourselves in cultures that showed me life always holds something more to offer, no matter the age. Rebecca vanished from the horizon, at least from my present moment. I did not need conflicts or revenge. Her quiet departure was enough. In her place emerged a peace I had not expected to find. That peace that arises when you decide to leave behind what hurts you and make room for what nourishes you. I felt free. Free from others' expectations, free from imposed guilt, free simply to be myself. The garden I planted on my balcony grew strong. Every green leaf was a promise, each flower a celebration. I tended it with care, and sometimes Jane and I would sit there to read, to dream, and to plan futures that once seemed impossible. This connection with the earth taught me that life is a constant cycle of planting, waiting, and blossoming, that one can be reborn as many times as necessary. My pension, which I used to feel ashamed of, became a symbol of independence. Through it, I learned to manage my finances, to plan my expenses, to run my life with autonomy. I depended on no one else to survive, to decide, to live. That gave me a dignity that no insult or scorn could ever take away. The day Jane returned to the house adorned with an award from an art competition sparkled brighter than ever through Daniel's eyes. He told me that everything he had learned from me inspired him to be courageous and to pursue his passions without fear of making mistakes. That declaration became the greatest reward I could ever receive. My legacy was not in material possessions or invisible sacrifices, but in genuine love and the lesson that one can always start anew. Finally, I understood that the greatest gift I gave myself was allowing happiness without conditions, without apologies, embracing joy my own way with my timing and choices. That happiness was my silent revenge against those who doubted me. I did not need to prove anything to anyone. My life spoke for itself. In this new chapter, I built a home that was truly mine, a space where laughter replaced tears, where light conquered shadows, where love revealed itself in simple yet powerful ways. A home that did not rely on titles or belongings, but on the inner peace cultivated through great effort. As I write these words, I know my story is neither unique nor perfect, but it is genuine. It is the story of a woman who found her voice when many thought it was too late, who decided she deserved respect, affection, and dignity, who learned to love herself unconditionally and let go of anything that did not help her grow. Because in the end, it is not the pension, nor the house, nor the years that define a person. The ability to reinvent oneself, to rise again and again, to keep moving forward with an open heart, ready to embrace the best that life has to offer. That is something no one can ever take away from me.